And here we are, we're recording, and we are here and now. And the here and now is Venezuela. Venezuela has been invaded. Invaded. President has been kidnapped, and his wife. I don't know what they're going to accuse her of. And the vice president has spoken up and said the only president, is Maduro, and that she's representing him, and Venezuela is continuing, like meanwhile, Mr. de Trump has declared himself, to be the president of Venezuela, basically, saying that they own the oil there and that they're running the country. He is running the country there now. And so, a lot of the right-wing Venezuelans, in exile are celebrating. But when they're asked, like what they think about, Trump saying, that he was going to be running the country, they sort of quiet down. They say, well, you know, that's not what we're thinking about. Okay. Well, you better think about it, because Venezuela, if they don't want to hand over Venezuela to the United States of America and to be ripped off further, well, and this is in spite of the fact that Venezuela, under sanctions, nonetheless, was growing at a rate of 5% per year. But 8 million, Venezuelans, had left Venezuela, because they didn't, their standard of living, was being attacked. And that's basically the middle class of Venezuela that left. A whole class of Venezuelans, left Venezuela to go to, 17, other countries throughout Latin America, South America, and elsewhere, like even Canada here, like with the Venezuelans that I know here. So, there's certain points to be made. The first point is that this invasion of Venezuela that killed 40 members of the security, for uh, uh, is not the same as the Ukraine, where the Russian-speaking provinces, invited Russia to come in to defend them because they were in a civil war against this authority, with their own militia that was fighting to be autonomous or retain the autonomy that they had under the previous constitution. But Zelensky, like unilaterally tried to dismiss that previous confederation, constitution that they had, providing autonomy for the Russian-speaking provinces. So simply, dismiss that, constitutional arrangement, tried to take over the provinces, not for the sake of the people there, but for the sake of the resources and the industrial infrastructure. So Russia coming in, to help the local militias, resist that invasion of the Russian-speaking provinces is not the same as the United States of America going in there to rip off the oil. And it's not because the United States of America needs the oil for its own economy. No, they just want to have control. It's a matter of control and profitability for the American oil companies, of course. Exxon was nationalized, previously in 1974, 1976. And now, Trump is saying that, the American oil was stolen by Venezuela, even though it's inside Venezuela. So they're going to they want to reverse the nationalization of the oil industry there, but is Venezuela going to agree to that? Even the opposition figures, do they want to agree to that? Well, if they do, they're going to be they're going to lose their popular support because that's it's going to be making more money off of Venezuelan oil than Venezuela is, so I don't think the Venezuelans are going to appreciate that.
Well, I have just talking to you has made me reconsider or rethink the propaganda that's coming out of Washington. I'm a little concerned that most of the analysts, and I'm not including us, are giving their opinion about what's going on, as opposed to looking at what's happening in Venezuela on the ground. What's happening there now? That's what's important to me. And I'm not saying what Trump says isn't important. So we have numbers of people who were murdered by U.S. forces or by the bombing. Okay. The vice president has called for the release of Maduro and his wife, and that has been seconded by Russia and China. The state of emergency that the president of Venezuela put into effect before he was sequestered and stolen from the country is still in effect. There have been no demonstrations supporting the bombing in Venezuela. Um, and now I'll talk about what the United States is saying. Trump is acting as if Venezuela has now been colonized by the US directly. That is to say, if quote we run it, then it's your property. The people of Greenland should really be concerned about this because that's what Trump wants to do there. But
Mhm.
Venezuela wasn't even stated as a new colonial conquest. But the way that it sounds now from the rhetoric of the administration, there's a government in place in Venezuela. It has not been toppled by US troops or from some coup of pro-US forces in Venezuela.
Mm,
So the Venezuelan government still exists. The Bolivarian revolutionary government is still in power.
mm,
Therefore, the United States does not control Venezuela.
mm,
That's something we have to be very clear about because the rhetoric of imperialism is saying now it's ours. No, it's not yours until you topple the government, kill all the leaders, like in Iraq. You
mm,
have to do an Iraq move to say it's yours. Yes, that's
mhm,
what you have to do. You have to come in, bomb it, take the leader. We got the leader, but the government of Iraq was dissolved. The army was wiped out. Was fought. Well, the army became ISIS and Al Qaeda and other people, and then you
mm,
put in your own government. Until that is done, I mean, and if that can be done, then it is not the United States government. I want to make that statement very clear because if you're in the U.S., the propaganda you're seeing, one, no Venezuelans were killed. That's not even discussed. No, it isn't. It's not. Not one U.S. news outlet, New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times, Chicago Trib, AP, UPI has talked about the deaths and destruction in the country. So it is official propaganda of U.S. imperialism that is being used by the U.S. That is being um, parroted by the U.S. media. Okay. Secondly, the U.S. media is not saying what I am saying. You do not control Venezuela. You came in, you kidnapped the president, like you said. Was his wife being charged? Well, I don't even freaking know. It's just take her with us, okay? And then you say you control. Well, if you control it, you have to do in Iraq.
mm,
I mean, that's what you have to do. That was control. Saddam Hussein was the president. The government was overthrown. A new person, whatever the idiot's name, was put in the marshal of Iraq. I run it now. I do this. That does not exist now. And if and when that exists, then you can make such an imperialist conquistadores type of statement. I want to make that very clear to people who are listening to this. That
yeah.
the rhetoric coming out of Washington, D.C. is one of an imperial owner of land.
Mm,
I run you, I control you. No, you don't. You don't control anything. Yes,
mm,
you did steal the president. Yes, you did kill, probably hundreds of people were killed. Okay. You did destroy property of Venezuela. You have no authorization by anybody to do it, yet it's not yours. They're acting as if they want Venezuela to be the first neo colony of the Trump corollary of the new national security plan. That's what they're talking.
mm.
To me, that's all. I just want to kind of talk, just mention that. That's it. That's it for me right now.
Very true, very true. In historical sort of context, what we're experiencing now can be put into the the colonial revolutions that erupted and succeeded under the tutelage of the USSR, and the 1960 UN General Assembly resolution supporting the right of national self-determination and the right of national liberation, the right of an anti-colonial revolution against imperialism to recognize all the new countries that emerged out of the colonial epoch. Okay, and they all became, formally politically independent. And so the United Nations started off, I think, with 43 members, turned into 194 members now, with all the independent colonies that claimed, representation in the General Assembly. Now, while there was a USSR, the United States couldn't reverse this. This was too powerful, because they were all protected by the USSR. If the US, like invaded any sort of, ex-colony, to colonize it again, then the USSR, would have world support to go in there and push the United States out. So they couldn't do it. Now, that's not the case. Okay. So the United States think they can reverse the whole colonial revolutionary epoch of the post-World War II and recolonize all of these former colonies who are politically, formally independent, but they want to recolonize it economically and then use that, economic clout, to dominate the political structure of that country. Well, are they going to be able to get away with it? In this test case, which is Venezuela, doesn't seem like they're going to be able to get away with it, because you're entirely correct. The government, the Bolivarian government, the Bolivarian revolutionary anti-imperialist, anti-colonialist government is still in place. The mass demonstrations in Venezuela taking place now are in support of that government, not opposed to that government. So, they've basically failed. Those who oppose the government had left. They don't have the clout, to do anything about it in Venezuela now. The Venezuelan people have been armed by Maduro previously. They're all ready, and waiting, for any American soldiers that want to come in there. If they've come in there in the middle of the night, at 101 to kill, all the security forces are protecting Maduro. Well, what are they going to do? Try to do that, again? Are they going to try to do that, for the vice president, the woman, spokesperson for Venezuela now? It's not going to work. And if they try to do that, take over the oil fields, there's a lot of Venezuelans, who'll go there, and take them down. Now, the easiest way for Venezuela to retaliate now, not only, is there going to be a big, emergency session of the Security Council tomorrow at the United Nations, which is going to condemn this, and then it's going to be vetoed by the United States, of course. And it'll go to the General Assembly, and it can be overturned. This would be a good time to overturn a UN Security Council of the United States veto by having a supermajority in the General Assembly overrule the Security Council, as should be in the case of Gaza as well. And then all the gates of revolution will open, and the United Nations will become a revolutionary organism, that can take down the Zionist regime and the United States imperialism. That's to be wished, but it's not on the agenda immediately. But it could be. It could be, anything can happen now. So now we're going to go see, like what happens. But within Venezuela itself, what they can do, just cut off the Chevron oil. Chevron has a contract, to take out something like something less than 1 million barrels of oil a day, when previously, they were doing 3 million barrels of oil a day. So, they could easily, like shut down Chevron and not allow Exxon, to come back and take back the oil fields that were nationalized previously because they were Venezuelan. So, and we're talking about oil fields that are the biggest reserve, in the world, bigger than Saudi Arabia. This is really a crucial battle, determining battle, as to the future of U.S. colonialism. Now, Trump refers to the Monroe Doctrine, which is discredited, but he refers to it as if like it's a legal sort of proclamation, that governs South America, and he calls it instead of the Monroe Doctrine, he calls it the Dumrow Dumrow Doctrine after his D in his name. No, yeah, because Donald, like Donald, it starts with a D. However, what people don't know is that his surname also starts with a D, and his real, German name is de Trumpf, which he doesn't use, because a Trumpf is, a little sort of creature that's used in cartoons, and doesn't want to be associated with that. But that originally is his name, and So, like he's proposing a de Triumphinum doctrine, to take control of South America. And he's intervened in two elections there as well, in which he's tried to manipulate the results of the election by threatening to undermine the country if they didn't vote for his preferred candidate. So, and that's worked, to some extent in a couple of countries, and then the media, even Al Jazeera, they talk about, the rise of the right-wing regimes in South America. But when there was a number of socialist governments that were elected in South America, did they talk about the rise of the left-wing movements and the revolutionary socialist movements in South America and in the world? No. Somehow this escapes their attention, even on Al Jazeera and even amongst the left. They don't realize, that the socialist revolution internationally, the world revolution is advancing. And what we're seeing are the counter-revolutionary attempts. And so, everybody's talking about the counter-revolutionary attempts, like to reverse, the historic tendency that is dynamic that is happening at this time.
Well,
And, the
I
point is,
think
that we should be more optimistic, that we should be looking forward, to the revolutionary process and not sort of, bemoaning that, there have been certain setbacks, like the fall of the USSR. Actually, that it wasn't such a big blow as it's purported to be, because, the USSR was a block on the revolutionary process in the world to some extent, as well as, aiding it to be an anti-colonial revolution. But then thereafter, they were supporting the national bourgeoisie of each of those colonies, so, like what the benefit they had, in terms of the colonial revolution, was reversed by the fact that they were supporting neo-colonialism in effect. So where do we go from here?
well, I would like to make a criticism of the international response of some countries. I'm not going to talk about those who supported the abduction of President Maduro and Cilia Flores. But I would like to talk about, and I'm not saying this to condemn the country, but the some of the verbiage that's come out since the event yesterday. Um, I'm, I'm getting it right now for you.
I think Chevron provides 30% of U.S. oil. If that were shut down, what would that do? Like shut down a third of, the American economy, perhaps. Let's see what happens. You want
Well,
to take Venezuela? Well, okay, let's go for it.
um, the Secretary General said he continues to emphasize the importance of full respect for international law, including the UN Charter. He is deeply concerned that the rules of international law have not been respected. These developments constitute a dangerous precedent. Okay, well, okay. Um, and what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it?
Sanction the United States of America.
Well, I mean, he doesn't say.
He doesn't say it, but he could, like,
He could, yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh,
The another one is from Mexico. Um, oh my God, this is really wrong. Um,
Steve, you have a statement, I believe. Could you
okay,
bring up your
I
statement, refer to it, and perhaps, read us the introduction to it, and then we can put it into the comments, of the video
sure
in order for it to be made available.
yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that. I did do a statement.
It's a good statement.
I produced it myself because I thought it was. I'm gonna tell you why I wanted to do this. Um, the reason why I wanted to do this is I support the Bolivarian Revolution, and I don't think that um, enough has been done to support it in the United States against the attacks. And I criticize myself for not doing enough. So I decided to write a statement, and I can read it here. The United
Yes.
States seizure of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro Moros, his wife Cilia Adela Flores de Maduro, on 3 January 2026 is an act of imperialist aggression and lawless regime change. No country has the right to kidnap, detain, or repossess the leadership of another country. The working class everywhere must condemn this criminal action, demand the immediate release of all detained Venezuelan civilian officials, that is, Maduro and Mrs. Flores de Maduro, and call for the withdrawal of all foreign forces and the release and the end of the blockade. Why is their immediate release required now? The U.S. assault is an act of plunder and geopolitical conquest aimed at seizing Venezuela's energy resources. The seizure of Maduro and Miss Cilia de Maduro establishes a dangerous precedent. If imperial powers are permitted to abduct civilian leaders, democratic rights worldwide will be shredded, and the way will be open to ever greater military lawlessness. Defending the release of detained civilians is a basic democratic and anti-imperialist demand. It is a defense of democratic norms against foreign military abduction. So that's the beginning of the document. Then it goes on. Why is this important, this fight back? We oppose the U.S. military operation because it is imperialist and criminal. The United States has a history of bullying Venezuela since the Bolivarian Revolution began under the leadership of the deceased revolutionary leader Hugo Chavez. The United States imposes economic and military power against Venezuela, imposing sanctions, stealing its oil from ships in international waters, and closing off the waters around Venezuela with U.S. military ships for the purpose of overthrowing the Bolivarian Revolution in Venezuela. The working class in Venezuela, in Latin America, internationally, must conduct an independent struggle, defend democratic rights against imperialism while organizing to replace the rule of capital with workers' power and international socialism. What are our immediate demands? We demand the unconditional release of the president of Venezuela, his wife, and all detained Venezuelan civilian leaders. We demand immediate cessation of hostilities, withdraw all foreign military forces. That means the U.S. forces that may be on the ground, CIA, and those in the ocean or surrounding Venezuela, and an end to the illegal blockade and seizure of Venezuelan assets and tankers. So no more tankers seized on the high seas. That's just
Mhm.
got to stop.
Mhm.
Restore civilian rule. Well, basically, civilian rule has so restore the previous civilian democratic rule of Venezuela, which means the return of President Maduro and his wife to Venezuela to resume his work as president. Now, that is an unprecedented demand. We're saying he has to go back ASAP, like to today. He's
Mhm.
got to go. And in all sanctions, in all asset seizures, in all economic strangulation that punish the people and bolster imperialist aims. Now, I'm going to stop here. Now, for my concern, I've heard no leaders of the world say what I just said.
Mhm.
The last point, in all
Mhm.
sanctions.
Mhm.
They just got
Yeah.
to go. That's always that's the white elephant in the big elephant in the room.
Mhm.
Release Maduro, release his wife, return them to Venezuela, in the military blockade, all CIA off of Venezuelan soil, and stop these sanctions. The
Mhm.
world community, those who are opposing the military attack, the murders of Venezuelan citizens, and the seizure of the president and his wife, unfortunately, are not saying in the blockade economically. They have to add that to their list of demands, and we must demand that that be added to their list because it's important that international capitals have come out against this. This is very important. It's not like
Mhm.
it's just us in the U.S. or in Canada saying, "Okay, we're against it." The world say, "Oh, we don't care. We're on vacation." No, that's good, but we need to add this point because that's the underlying crime is the
Mm.
decades of attacks on Venezuela by the United States.
Yeah.
And Maduro's capture is the pinnacle of the criminal activity that's been going on. So,
Yeah.
like I
Very good.
said, I wrote this because I felt that I had not done enough in these past years to support something I know is genuine, which is the Bolivarian Revolution. It is a
Mm.
genuine anti-colonial, anti-imperialist movement that has been voted on by the people of Venezuela
Mm.
to continue. And I think if I feel that way, I have to do something material to support it. At least I can write this and share it with colleagues and people around the country and around the world.
Yes. And this is a legitimate, government, like despite, the criticism that could be made of Maduro and his
Mhm.
loss of some degree of support, nonetheless, he's got more support than any other candidate for the presidency. Like his support may have been close to 50%, but they cannot delegitimize, him with any other candidate, who supposedly, like got more support than he did, because there was no other such candidate.
And
Okay. So
And
that,
you can't just come in and grab the man and take him to the U.S. and try with some BS because all U.S. intervention is based on some lie.
yeah.
Gulf of Tonkin, the lie. Pearl Harbor, the lie. Weapon of mass destruction, the lie. The students in Grenada were under attack by Maurice Bishop. Anything you want to say, it's always a lie.
Mm.
Okay, it's never true. And if it was true, so what? Okay,
Yeah.
but it's always a lie. It's
A
always something made
pretext,
up.
yeah, an excuse,
A
for
pretext,
attacking.
always a pretext,
Yeah,
always. Because we'll talk about so that we'll do more leaflets and we're going to do more statements, which we'll talk about that history. But the U.S. does not control Venezuela. We must be very clear about that. Venezuela is still under the control of the Bolivarian government.
yeah,
Their leader was kidnapped. Their leader was seized, taken to another country against his will. There's no law in the world except the law of force. The
yeah,
law, I'm the bully and I'm gonna take you, that says you can do that. There
yeah.
isn't. There is none. You
That's
know.
there's an expression that describes all that. Might makes right.
Hmm.
Have you heard of that? That's a funny sort of expression of the imperialism. Might makes right.
Yeah.
And they claim that they have the right, because they have the might. But it works, for anybody else as well. Like so, does Russian might uh, does Russian might make right in Ukraine? No, they deny that.
Oh, everybody says, oh no, you can't say that. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
but
what they would say.
I think we should do a second part. Like we can end, complete this discussion on Venezuela and and then start another recording, to talk about Ukraine afterwards, But on the statement that you have there, which is very professional, I'd like to suggest, that there should be one point that could be added on,
Sure.
and that is that until the demands that you have enunciated just now are fulfilled, the release of Maduro, the elimination of the sanctions against Venezuela for no good reason, until that's accomplished, then Venezuela should boycott the United States of America and stop the oil from Chevron going to the United States of America, that 30% of U.S. oil imports. Like why should they get, uh, that concessionary oil? Venezuela was dealing with the United States. They were selling their oil to the United States of America,
They still are. They
already,
still are.
uh,
They still
and
are.
still
Yeah.
are, like why? Why don't they just cut that off? Cut off, take down Chevron as well as Exxon, and then, see what the United States says, about putting Maduro on trial. That would, like put the United States into a recession right then and there, just like that. So why don't they do it? So I think that should be added into the statement.
Okay. Okay. No problem.
Okay.
Yeah,
The
because
statement is,
this 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 is an open source document. Things
yes.
can be added, things can be taken off, things can be reworded. It's not like my property.
Okay.
I'm offering this to people who want to fight against the U.S. imperialism, who want to support Venezuela. What
Yeah.
can we write and share with others to make an effective appeal? So thank you
Yeah.
very much for that suggestion. Thank you.
Yes. That will make it, that would make it a substantial document, that would have, a force to it, because just saying that Venezuela should cut off the Chevron oil, imports to the United States of America, just that alone, like is an explosion. That sort of, like people would say, oh yeah, we could actually reverse this, because people always talk about, how they're being defeated and, how right they are, to oppose, this repression and all that sort of thing. But they don't think about, like how they can defeat the repression that they're being subjected to, instead of, just, coming out with some liberal cliches, about sovereignty. That's not,
Yeah,
good enough.
no,
We want, a way to reverse, the counter-revolutionary sort of
and
initiative, the
and I
colonialization,
also
process. We don't accept that, and we can defeat it. Like
well,
let's not be
yeah,
defeatist. You know,
yeah.
Look forward to
I
how we can
appreciate
win
that.
this.
I appreciate that. One of the things I think we're going to have to add when we make version two, or modify is we gotta. I'm not saying attack, but we have to bring to bear what you just said earlier, Abraham. In this situation, and that's why I wanted to talk about the people from other nations besides Brazil, who did not say this in their response. People calling for we're calling for dialogue. We're talking about negotiations. Negotiations about what? What is there to negotiate? There's no negotiations about taking somebody's president. What dialogue? Hey, put him back on a plane and send him back home.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah,
That I
yeah,
mean, there was so the thing about dialogue and the rules, and to expose, condemn the United States for violating the rules. And in the United States, people have to say that because
yeah,
nobody's saying that in the United States. Trump and Hegseth and Marco Rubio are controlling the narrative too much.
yeah,
There are 300 million United States people in the country. If you had 3 million saying what I'm saying, you could have an impact. Even 300,000, even 30,000, but 3,000 is not enough.
yeah,
You need
yeah,
30,000, 300,000. I'm talking about percentages of the total to say, no, you could not break international law. We don't endorse this. We don't support this. This is not what we're taking. I let the world know there are large numbers of Americans who look like average people and also the MAGA people. Trump ruled, he came in power on no more wars. All he's doing is giving y'all wars.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
no, war in bombing Iran, bombing Venezuela, threatening Greenland,
Bombing
threatening Canada,
Gaza. Yeah,
oh Gaza, oh my God, Gaza,
yeah,
Gaza.
yeah,
In 1 year, in 12 calendar months, is that not breaking his campaign promise? Yes, it is.
yeah,
So the MAGA people, as much as they are racist and backwards and supporting U.S. imperialism, they gotta speak up too.
yeah.
If more people spoke, if more people get to the microphones, demand the press cover what they're going to say, then we can start to shape the narrative. It can't just be the government say we control Venezuela. No, you don't.
Yeah.
No, you don't. And we don't want you to either. Got enough problems at home.
Yeah. So I think
Got
we
enough
can say
problems
that,
at home. How much the operation cost? How many billion dollars was spent? The boat sitting out there, whatever the hell else you said you did, all the money you spent, how many billions have been spent in this operation? How many people were killed? Where's the compensation? Where's the reparation of people who were killed?
mm,
Just civilian, just collateral damage. Oh, just some dead ass Venezuelans. Who cares? I mean, come on. It's
yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah, he treats, colonialized people as garbage. He doesn't even
Hmm.
respect any human rights there. So I
Right.
think what we're saying is, until the sanctions on Venezuela are lifted, we call for sanctions on
Yeah.
the United States. Boycott the United
Until the
States.
state. Good. That's good. Until they are lifted, Venezuela has the right to impose some kind of sanction on the United States regarding selling this oil. I mean, it's a right they need to seriously consider
Yeah.
because nothing's being done right now. Well, I mean, what
So
can
yeah,
Venezuela do? They have this option. Yeah,
Venezuela should call for the sanctioning of the United States, and they're not doing it. So we're doing it. We've
we're doing
initiated
it.
the campaign.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, come on.
Shut down Chevron. Yeah, for sure. Hmm.
Okay, cool.
Good. And now the only thing that's missing now in the statement is a list of sponsors. So,
Right.
you've written a statement, so it's sponsored uh, basically by your YouTube channel,
Website.
Pantherism.
Right.
Okay, so
Right.
that's number one.
Put that
And
there.
we have endorsed it, from the Jewish Socialist Bund. So you
Okay.
can add on. And now we're looking for others, to contact us or to write into the comments, of this video to bring about, like a comprehensive statement calling for sanctions on the United States of America in response to the sanctions on Venezuela and the attack on Venezuela. Okay, so now we want more sponsors for this appeal, and contact us and send in your sponsorship, as an organization and as an individual, and we'll make up a list, of support and build up,
Okay.
a big movement out of this.
So we need to post this in the comments on Pantherism, on Substack, and I need to make that modification. The text, I'll send it to you. We can wordsmith it so it's right,
Yeah,
and then do a version two. That should be version two. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then we'll put this
Cool.
out, asking for endorsements. Okay, very
Cool.
good.
Yeah.
Cool.
Excellent. Excellent. And when everybody who's listening, that's what collaboration looks like right there. That's
Yep.
collaboration. Got an idea? Humble your ego. It's for the law. It's for the overhaul, not for you. You make the changes of what
Yeah.
you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are sort of, political organizations, that put out a statement, in their own name, because they want to catch the glory, like of being, in the leadership of this opposition. That's not the point, to build up an organization, that calls itself a party. No, we want to build up a movement,
Right.
the biggest united front, possible, in order to create the force, the revolutionary force to reverse, the attacks upon, formerly colonialized country. So, we're here for Venezuela, not for, some sort
Right.
of Serbian political party,
Right.
period.
No,
Yeah,
right. Cool.
very good. Okay, so we're going to log off in this part one, and then we're going to come back, for part two. So
Great.
see everybody soon again with our discussion coming up on the Ukraine.